Hi, Dave Smith with Police One. With me today is our special guest, Chief Jeff Chudwin. You know, Jeff, you and I have known each other for decades now, and I've always, every chance I get, sit in on your classes because with your unique background as a law enforcement officer and a prosecutor, you've seen a lot of things. We face more challenges than ever. What do you see of the current state of affairs right now?
One of the things I always say is that no matter how long we do this, we are still students. And one of the great opportunities I've had is to learn from individuals like yourself and pass that information along. I believe that's our greatest responsibility as trainers. And here we are at ILETA at this wonderful conference where we have that type of energy around us. So first, let me thank you for the efforts that you have put into this in all these years.
Well, thank you.
And I always say, you have been my mentor and assisted me greatly. One of the things I've taken away from the early discussions we've had is we would look at each other at the end and we would say, stay safe.
Right.
And I've adopted that. But the recognition is there's no true safety. Whether it be for police officers or our citizens, everybody lives in a world where safety is an illusion. There's many things that happen that create unsafe conditions. One of the key issues that was brought to my attention and was stated this way: we don't control the events around us. We can only control our response to them. And that was something that you really stressed to us early on. How do we gain some mastery of ourselves? And that's the question I put back to you. You know, once again, where do we find that ability?
No matter what our attitude, we're going to get thrown in situations, and like we both agree and believe, is how we react to those situations, that resilience. And again, it comes from all the things that we've always, you and I, and so many other people that we share our common bonds with. You know, we believe that training is one of the core essence, but not just to wait for others. We constantly have to be growing ourselves, developing ourselves, and you make yourself more and more resilient. Although again, every year that gets tougher and tougher.
And it does. And then we look at each other and say, well, what more can we do? And one of the themes of my presentation at ILETA this year is the issue that came from my great friend, Lieutenant Wayne Thompson, who retired from the Chicago Police Department after he had spent a lifetime involved in so many difficult issues. And I said, what is it that allows us not only to survive, because not mere survival, but to succeed, to win? And although he didn't use these words, this is the message I took from it. He said, you have to know what you can do, you have to know when you can do it, and you have to be prepared to do it immediately. Now, within that concept is to know the law and policy. So you're not locked in this endless loop of can I do it, will I do it, should I do it? Once you are absolutely confident that you understand the legal concepts and you read your policy, not before you get in trouble, because if you know your policy, you won't be getting in trouble for violating it. And also, once you've committed law and policy to your understanding and make it something that you are, as they say, unconsciously competent with, then we move into the procedural and tactical side. And I claim no great expertise in tactics any more than anybody else. I study it every day, have discussions with everybody I can, but recognize that certainly there's better ways to do things. And one of the key parts of this know when you can do it, be prepared to do it immediately, is the concept, as I call it, speed kills. Now, we know that our officers are driving too fast.
Right.
And you come out of the highway patrol in your early days, and you know that how many of us have simply, by the grace of the good Lord, got away with it, but how many won't?
Right.
So speed in terms of driving is a very significant issue. And when I ask officers, why do officers drive too fast? Well, they all answer the same way: because we can. Well, the answer is no, you can't. And as your leadership and supervisors were telling you now, you got to turn it down. But past the issue of speed kills in driving is the issue of speed kills in response. How fast we enter a violent scene tells us that we may be moving in an adrenalized state without rational thought. We're simply trying to, quote, get to the middle of the fight. The problem is the middle of the fight may look like a volcano exploding out of the ground. And if it truly was a volcano, nobody in their right mind would jump in and be incinerated. Agreed?
Correct.
Absolutely, because you'd recognize that danger for what it is. Why then do our officers rush into the middle of a man with a gun call, not knowing if it's another police officer who could be on or off duty, not knowing if it's a justified homeowner, store owner that's there for self-defense, or in fact is a violent criminal who without thought will murder the officer or anybody else? And let me pose this question to you, Dave. In your career and all the things you've done since then, what call had you ever responded to or heard about where it would have changed if you'd taken 10 extra seconds to assess the situation?
None.
Can you think of any?
No, and you're right. There are situations where I can think of where I created undue hazard for me and the victim of a home invasion, for instance, because I didn't take that 10 seconds because I rushed. And, you know, again, like you said, speed kills.
Speed kills. So if we can pass this message to our officers that when you set of binoculars on the seat next to you, If you can't afford much, you can still buy a $25 pair of, Walmart, Target binoculars, because you know what? You can still see with them.
Right.
And find a point before you rush into what is called the kill zone. Before you rush into the point of contact, lift those binoculars. Take that 5 seconds, and within that 5 or 10 seconds with the binoculars, begin to breathe. What does Dave Grossman and all of our great trainers tell us about breathing? What have you told us? All the scientific studies. As we begin to breathe, we can start to more normalize our heart rate, our blood pressure, our peripheral vision expands out, our rational thought capabilities start to return to us. And if we can do that, and we can start to slow down, not rush in, not be an uncontrolled group of officers instead of a controlled team of officers. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, and that prevents fixation, hypervigilance, the other things that we're concerned about in officer, like confrontational settings. And again, hurrying enhances your probability of falling into fixation or hypervigilance.
We were just having this discussion before we came up here, talking with Phil Messina, who has worked with us so hard on the physical fight skills over so many years, and he said the danger is falling in the gaps. Because there's so many things we take, it's almost like we take chunks of information. It's not like you're watching a continuous movie. And between those chunks are certain gaps that you can fall right through.
Right.
You're going to run up the stairs to get into that house without ever assessing the fact that if you would have looked and just taken a moment, that second stair doesn't exist. Your leg's going to go right through into an open space, potentially end up with a broken leg or be in a vulnerable position where anybody can step out and harm you. Right. So as we go back and just readdress this issue, stay safe. Well, stay safe really means don't do it simply because we say to do it. Do it because you believe it's needed. Make the phrase mean more than just a statement. Make it mean something of substance. And in terms of speed kills, all we need to do is just slow down one notch. Instead of going 90, we're going to just crank it down to 70. Now, that's not to say we can do away with all of this. You and I know that, again, there are issues within here that we simply can't control. But within a certain level of what we deal with, we do have self-control. We do have the means to address that. It's simply an issue of, regardless of rank, this is not a rank issue.
Right.
The chief of police must be held to the same standard as the newest patrolman, but everybody within that structure needs to be held to that individual responsibility. And that's the key point. Forget organizational responsibility for just a moment and just say to yourself, you have a responsibility to yourself. You have a responsibility to your spouse, your children, your family, your loved ones, to do the very best you can to return back to them in good health, both mentally and physically, and have a normal life, whatever normal may mean. Right. I mean, we've seen some things we look at people think are normal, and you and I just shake our head. But you know, if it works for them, God bless them.
Exactly right.
So I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you and just have this brief conversation, because if our words can reach our officers, our deputies, our agents out in the field, and just ask them, just sit back for just a moment, take that deep breath, visualize that call that you're going to rush to at high speed and say to yourself, I can turn this down just a notch. And in turning it down a notch, just like we said before, I may not control the events around me, but I control my response to them. And I have taken individual responsibility at this moment in time that in the future I will do this. And the final thought I would put out is this. This is the test. I've told my officers and others that I train with, I will never ask, order you, or request you to put your life at risk needlessly, foolishly, or recklessly. Ask yourself when you're about to do this, is it needless? Is it foolish? Is it reckless? And if it is, stand down, reassess, and do the right thing, because you're going to know the right thing, but you've got to give yourself the opportunity to recognize that it is in fact the right thing.
I tell you what, that's powerful advice. And again, Jeff, as always, I appreciate you sharing your insight, and I can't wait to hear what you're going to come up with next year from your musings, because that's where a lot of these great ideas come from. And I mean it. You stay safe.
God bless you, brother. Good Lord willing. Thank you.